There's just a few things you need to learn. You need to have skills to be able to write a grant. You need to be able to read on maybe a 10th grade level, if that. You need to be able to write a complete full sentence, and you must be able to follow directions and instructions. Those are really the three basic criteria. That's it. If you can do those three things, then you can write a grant.
Licensed attorney, award-winning writer, businessman, entrepreneur, and other over-the-top crap. It's Life and Law with Eugene Cisco Jr.
Welcome back to another episode of the Real Life and Law podcast. Eugene, my man, how you doing today?
Well, as we was discussing off the air, a little bit worse for wear, had a fall, as I think I said last time, and my hand is healing. My ribs are a little bit better. I got a couple miles in today, and my ear is a little better, though less of it today.
Yeah. Do you want to maybe explain for our listeners or our viewers who may have not seen the TikTok video?
Yeah, I've had two-time kidney transplant patient, and will probably need another one here sooner than later. And as a result, the medicine I take makes me more susceptible to certain types of skin cancers. And one of them is a squamous cell cancer. And because I'm light-skinned and light blue eyes and blonde hair, makes me even more susceptible. And these squamous cells are a grade above a basal cell, but a notch below a melanoma. And so the one I had is on my ear, which is a little troubling. I had to have it sent off and biopsied, not sure what that's going to be like, but either way, I may have to have more treatment. But, I feel good.
That's good.
I don't think it's metastasized, as they say, but that's why those types of cancers are dangerous that way. So, but I go get screening. So if you're out there, get yourself screened, even if if you're immunocompromised, it's really important that you go get at least an annual screening by your dermatologist. Have your wife or your loved one, your partner, check your body over for any unusual knots and moles and rough patches, because those can be problematic.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely want to keep an eye on, I keep an eye on my moles, because some of them, I've had to have moles removed just for safety. And wear your sunscreen, people. Seriously. I have so many friends that don't wear sunscreen, and I'm like, okay, like, even if you don't want to protect yourself from the possibility of getting cancer down the road, the sun ages you. Do you want to look younger for longer? Just wear the sunscreen.
Used to, I never worried about that. Never worried about the sun. And even now I'll take my shirt off when I'm running, but it's usually in a really early morning when there's no sun, or late in the evening. And if there is sun, I wear long sleeves. I wear an old floppy hat that I run in. So I kind of look like a homeless guy when I'm running. But
nobody cares what you look like when you run.
Yeah, I've been doing this for really covering up and paying more attention over the last 10 years. But unfortunately, I'm 62. When I was, 10, 11, 12, 13, all the way up to 18, 19, 20, I was lifeguarding at a pool and staying out in the sun all the time. We didn't have to worry about sunscreen. No one told us about sunscreen, and no window tints in the windows and any of that crap. So I'm suffering my left side of my body, my hands, my left side of my face. Obviously, my ear is now affected seriously. My shoulders, all skin damage.
It's just the left side. Do you think that's from the car window?
Yeah, it's all sun exposure.
Yeah.
So it's accumulation of regular sun exposure, and then the intensified sun exposure that you get by sitting next to a window when you're young.
There's so many truck drivers out there that have this issue, and it's just the left side of their face, because the left side is constantly being exposed to UV rays.
Yeah, getting the hell beat out of it. So, and that's what you get. I mean, that's what I get. And
you know what I used to lay out in the sun and put baby oil on my skin when I was a teenager, and I am fair skinned. Like, I know I look like I have color now, but it's fake. It's not real. I'm very fair skinned. I have light, like naturally blonde hair, blue eyes. I should not have been doing this. And my mother would be like, stop it. Stop what you're doing now. Like, I would just try and roast myself because I wanted color.
Oh, and lay out on that. Did you ever lay out on, I've seen girls lay out on those aluminum foil.
I didn't do
Like,
that.
oh
I didn't
man,
do that.
like a piece of bacon, man.
But putting oil on your body is just as bad. And I still have friends that buy the oil and they'll say, oh, but there's SPF 4 in it. And I'm like, SPF 4, they're just putting that number on the bottle to make you buy it so you think it's better than using baby oil, but you're basically using olive oil on your skin. Like, there's no protection whatsoever.
No. When I was younger, they would even do, these girls would even do motor oil.
Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah.
I have not heard of that.
Because it has a different color and a tint. And they would lay out there and bake on those daggone foil blankets. And now I still see some of these women in town. You know, I grew up with a lot of them, and now they look like a leather handbag.
Oh yes, I can believe that. And what people don't realize is even if it's cloudy, the sun can still harm you. Like, you can, the UV, I think it's UVA and UVB rays will still penetrate your skin. So I always tell the girls, add SPF to your skincare routine and put it on daily, even in the winter, and you will look younger.
Cover up.
Yeah. My mother is in her 70s, early 70s, and she looks like she's in her late 50s. And every single one of my friends does not believe me. And they ask what her secret is. And she said, I have worn sunscreen my entire life. I cover up, I stay out of the sun, and I have SPF in my daily skincare routine. So you heard it here first. If you want to look younger for longer, protect your skin. Anyways, enough rambling about skincare and sunscreen. We are not talking about that today. Don't worry, folks.
No, not today.
Maybe one day. But today we're actually going to be talking about something that's near and dear to your heart. And I know it's near and dear to your heart because you talk about it all the time. And I want to say that you talk about it all the time because it has helped you tremendously, I want to say, financially. And we're talking about the art of grant writing today.
That's right. And it's a skill. Yeah, it's a skill. Not every, you see a lot of people on TikTok and these other platforms, Instagram and YouTube, and they all claim to be grant writers and they all claim to be able to, but I've yet to hear any of them. You'll hear some of them come on there and say, well, I just got a $3,000 grant or I got a $500 grant. Well, most of the time what they're talking about, because there's a real big difference. You can be a grant writer and you can be a person that files applications, right? Big difference in the two. A grant writer is someone that actually prepares a proposal, has a plan. And then there's those individuals that I'm fooling around with my mic. There's these individuals that just file applications. I saw one content creator talk about that they filed 20 grants today. Well, it takes you a real good funding opportunity. A good grant, a good proposal will take you weeks to file. So most people, when they talk about writing a grant, are talking about a 3 or 4 page application, which there's still skill in that. And if you don't do it right, it's not volume. It's not a volume game, although volume helps, but you got to know what you're doing first, and then you duplicate that process to create your volume. You just can't, throwing one turd out there, multiplying it by 10 will not increase your chances of getting a grant. Okay. So you want to try to shoot for write a real good gem, write a real good proposal, and then duplicate that proposal once you think it's good and duplicate it for a different area, a different demographic, a different, part of the country or wherever. But you got to first start with a really good grant proposal, and they take weeks. They're not, you just can't do 20 of those in a day. That's stupid. So it took me a while to figure it out. And I always sit down and think about this because you forget about what you've written, but conservatively, me and my daughter, who has helped me write my grants, she's part of one of my last teams I had. um, somewhere around $14 million that I've written on my own,
Wow.
and then another 5 or 6 million more that I have written for other agencies or helped, either led their team or participated in a real meaningful way, either through research or actually helping edit and proofread. Another $5 to $7 million. So I've been doing this for a while. Since my very first grant was in 85. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, I was dumb as
Before
a
I
big.
was born.
Oh yeah, yeah, you don't have to say that. I was just green, working another job, and saw a need. That's where grants come from. Grants are piles of money that either the government give away or a foundation gives away because there's a need. There's a need somewhere in a community. And so they give money to someone that wants to try to help satisfy or fix or fill that need. And so that's really why you get involved in writing a grant. So my very first one was, geez, I was out of college, just out of college, working a job as a mental health worker. And I thought, well, you know what? Substance abuse and addiction was my area back then, which it still is. So I thought, well, you know what? There's a need here. So back in 85, the addiction and abuse with drugs was just starting to come into the scene as it applies to and become a real problem for young people. So I thought, you know what? We need some more educational programs to help parents identify substance abuse and addiction in their kids. And so I thought, well, I'm going to, it's ignorant, total ignorance. Ignorance, they say, is a bliss. And my whole life has kind of been tailored on that premise. Like I just throw something out there and it works sometimes. But if you're ignorant enough, then you're not going to hear that negativity. You're just going to not understand it. So I developed this proposal before the internet and got all my resources, contacted a couple local universities and put together a plan. And I pitched it to a governmental organization. One of the community, it was the county board. So I pitched it to them. It was for $5,000. At the time I was making $8,000 as a full-time counselor in mental health. And a month later, they sent me a letter telling me I got the grant. It was a 3-year grant. They gave it to me for 3 years. And I thought, I'll be daggone, this thing actually works.
Well, I have a quick question. I don't mean to interrupt you, but you said you got because I know absolutely nothing about grants. So this is a whole learning experience for me. You said that they rewarded you the grant for 3 years. What does that mean?
So what that means is they give you a year at a time. So it's $5,000 for 3 years, $5,000 a year for 3 years.
Oh.
Based on your proposal. So what you do is a grant and a proposal is nothing more than a plan. So you develop and create a plan based on a problem or a situation that you see is a problem, and you try to fix it through your plan. And so if your plan's good enough, then you submit it to a funding source. And they look at your plan and decide on whether or not to give you a go at it. And so that's basically what a grant is in a nutshell.
Then do you take that money that you've been rewarded and you put it towards whatever the plan was for?
You follow your plan.
Okay.
You perform the duties. Your operation is centered around a set of objectives usually, and activities to carry out your objectives. And then at the end of the grant cycle, your objectives need to be measured. And based on the success, if you met your objectives, then that funding source will agree to give you a continuation for the next year. So that's essentially what a grant is. But I think the first one took me maybe a month or two to put together all on my own. I did it totally by myself. And then these others, the very first big one I did on my own. It was a $260,000 grant for 4 years.
Wow.
$260,000 a year for 4 years, my very first one.
And what was that put towards?
It was for an educational program to help disadvantaged, at-risk youth to continue on in their high school education and hopefully get them ready to go to college. So that was the purpose. That was the problem I was trying to solve, was helping young people in Appalachia who were on the lower end of the poverty scale, show them that they could, that they had the skills necessary to go on to college or, some type of post-secondary school. So that was the very first one I did. I didn't score very well on it, but I scored well enough to get one. And they're very competitive. I think at that time, holy cow. And again, that's where you're ignorant. You just don't know. And you realize later how special it is. At any one time, this particular grant, at any one time, there'll be 3,000 or 4,000 people apply. They only give out maybe 150. So, it's a pretty neat thing, once you get it.
So you say, that big grant, the first big grant that you were just talking about, how people apply to receive that grant? Is that what happens?
Yes. Other institutions, community agencies, colleges, universities, entrepreneurs like myself that have a nonprofit, they can apply. There are all kinds of funding opportunities out there available for people, a ton.
Right. So, but I guess what my question is say these non-for-profits or colleges or whoever are applying for the grant, then do they give it to one of these students that need it?
So what happens is once you're awarded, so my program was awarded to provide services to 63 people within my target area. And I had a 3-county target area to select 65 students a year and do activities with them.
Okay.
To increase the likelihood of those individuals enrolling in college. So each year, once complete with staff and everything else, and you develop a whole program for these people. And it was a summer program. So there's a lot that went involved in it. But see, I had a lot of information. I had worked for one of those programs for 10 years and learned how. That was my second endeavor into learning how to write a grant. So I always tell people, you can work part-time at a nonprofit, which is what I did, and you learn a little more skills, and then you strike out on your own. Or you can do it completely on your own, which is what I did the very first time. But if you have a certain set of skill sets at your current work, that's the best way, because you already have information. You have education, you have training, you have a background. You know how that thing works that you're doing already. And if you can find a problem to apply those skills, then you can most likely find money to fix that problem that you want to fix through a grant. I just matched my skills. And then as an attorney, I learned a whole nother set of skills and started working, wrote a couple of grants for some spouse abuse and shelters, spouse abuse shelters. And so I did a couple of those, because at that point then I'd gained some information and gathered a lot of intelligence on that particular area. So I wrote a couple grants for these. It was a small community shelter, but I wrote a couple grants for them, and it also paid me as an attorney to help prosecute some of those cases. So it goes on and how you can find money if you're willing to, if you have the knowledge. Now you can do it. Like I could write a grant for most anything, I believe. It would take me a little more while to develop the, information that it takes to make someone that reads the grant, because it's what you want to do. You want to make the person that reads your grant believe that you know what you're doing. And you can't do that unless you have the knowledge and have done a lot of research in that particular area. So I try to stick around areas that I already know and that I have a good base of knowledge.
That's smart. Um, Sorry, I'm so ignorant with this topic. I'm sorry. I apologize. But so let's go back to one of the grants that you have written. The people that win the grants or awarded the grants, they're not necessarily receiving money, but they're going through the program that you have written and gotten funding for.
No, well, no, no. When you write a grant as an agency, you get the money. I get 200 and I got 260, 280, whatever it was. You get that money as an agency. You become an agency or an organization, a community or organization. So you get that money, then you spend it on your clients. You spend it on the people that you tell the funding source that you're going to help.
Right, but is that money that you get, are you putting it towards running a program, or are you physically giving them money?
No. You run a program because money doesn't, a lot of times money doesn't help these individuals because that really what they need is someone to show them what to do.
So are there different types of grants? Are there grants that people can receive where they receive money, which is kind of like a bursary, or is that completely different?
No, people apply for grants a lot of times for student aid, but those are kind of an application grant. You get it generally because you qualify, not because you've done anything special, just because you qualify. There are those types of grants, but if you're really talking about business and trying to develop business or try to find something that see if there's grant money for something that you want to do, a project or a small business, yeah, there's stuff. There's a unlimited source out there. There's something called the Federal Registry. It's thousands and thousands of pages. It has listed every federal grant funding opportunity that's available. Whatever your little area of expertise is, I guarantee you can find a grant that's in the Federal Registry. And so you just start hunting, or you look at, of course, we're kind of going into now areas of how to find a grant, which is a whole big deal. But there are grants out there for almost anything you can think of. For any problem that you want solved, there's a grant for it. I always say there's a grant for that.
It's a good slogan. You should put it on a t-shirt.
Well, I bet there's a grant for that. I tell people that all the time.
How do you go about finding like the funding for it, or the people or the companies that fund them?
Well, there's a couple of ways. Okay. Some of the ones I already had knowledge of. And some of them I had knowledge of because where I went to work, they would say, hey, we've got this grant that we're trying to write. You say you're good at this. Won't you help us? So then I look at what they're doing and I help them write. The Federal Registry, you can do a Google search. That's where the basic search starts. I mean, in the world, right? Just Google it. But that's like the worst, I think, because you have to slog through a lot of crap. Okay. The first 20 items you look at is someone trying to sell you something, someone trying to sell you the best grant funding sources. That's crazy. And you'll spend hours and you'll get frustrated and you'll just quit. The Federal Registry, if you're looking for federal grants, and those are the best kind of grants, in my opinion. Federal and state grants are both great sources. So they both have warehouses where you can search for funding opportunities. Now, the next best from that is to literally look around your community. Look at some of your nonprofit organizations and look how they get the funding for their programs. Like just go up to your YMCA. Talk to the director, or go to their meetings. You'll find out a lot at their meetings. You'll find out their grants. You'll be able to find out what kind of grant funding sources they have. Or go to the homeless shelter. They have tons of grants that operate homeless shelters. So the second best way to me is, or it could be, like I said, mentioned, my own career. I happen to know some of these little network of grants because I worked there. And after I worked there a while, I thought, and I participated in a lot of the writing as an employee, only knocking down $20,000 a year. I learned, I thought, well, hell, I do this by myself. I can do this. I know how to do this. This is before I was a lawyer. You don't have to be a lawyer. I tell people there's just a few things you need to learn. You need to have skills to be able to write a grant. You need to be able to read on maybe a 10th grade level, if that. You need to be able to write a complete full sentence, and you must be able to follow directions and instructions. Those are really the three basic criteria. That's it. If you can do those three things, and you can write a grant. Like that line, if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. Did you watch Dodgeball? It's a crazy movie.
With Will Ferrell?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I watched it once when it came out. It
That
was
cranky
such an
old
old
man
movie.
takes a wrench, and for part of their dodgeball training, he'd throw a wrench at him. And he said, if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. Well, I tell people, if you can write a complete sentence, if you can read, and if you, what was the other one? Read, write. Holy shit. I'm distracted.
And follow instructions.
Oh, so
I'm
let's do that again.
listening.
If you can read, if you can write a complete sentence, and if you can follow instructions, then you too can write a grant.
So, do you suggest for anyone looking to getting into grant writing to freelance and to do it on their own, or to work for something like a non-for-profit?
Well, if you follow the path that I followed, you're going to notice that I did a couple of things. I freelanced, but that was only after I learned my very first grant, $5,000 out of the chute. No, with zero information in my head. I knew that this local governmental agency was giving away money. And I thought, well, maybe I'll put a proposal together for substance abuse and addiction. So at old school, back in 1986, 85, 86, we actually had to call a library up and get their catalogs and look at their information. So I did all that, found out what the resources they had, and I put together a program, an 8-week program for parents to get them to get more information about their kids and the substance abuse and addiction, which even in 1985 was a really big problem. It was huge. It was just starting there too, big deal. So I did it, put probably 10, 12 hours work into it. I got awarded. Okay. $5,000. At the time I was making $8,000. So that was more than half my yearly salary. So I freelanced. I freelanced. And then 3 years later, I took a job working for a nonprofit and learning, studying under this dude who was great, if I might say, almost as good as I am now. But I learned a lot. I mean, this dude taught me so much about writing grants. And so I worked there for 11 years. And then I started writing my own. I quit. At that same time, I went to law school too. So I had a lot of things going on. So I went to law school, put a pause on the grant writing until after I graduated from law school, but picked it back up. And it has did the very first one on my own, freelancing. But that was after I had learned. So if the question is, what's the best way to do? If you've got plenty of time to dick around, and fool around, do it yourself. But you do need I don't recommend doing it without any education. I mean, it's because your learning curve, you can cut out that 12 years it took me to learn. The first time was a fluke. When I got that first grant, that was a fluke. I always tell people, if you can write a complete sentence, if you can read on 8th grade level, and if you can follow instructions, you can write a grant. But now you can write one, but you really need a little more information on where to look, how to submit them, the best places to look to find a grant, because there's a lot of places out there that'll separate you quickly from your money. There's a whole lot that goes into it. So it took me about 12 years to figure all this out, and that's with the help of somebody. So you really need to get to a good place to get information, and then be serious about it and be able to dedicate the time. By the way, you can do it part time. The very first grant I wrote, the second one I wrote that was successful. It was a it was about $1 million grant spread out over 4 years. I wrote it completely all by myself. Well, with the help of my wife, who's excellent. She's an excellent editor, which I'm not good at. I don't have those skills. And she helped me with a budget. Other than that, wrote it all by myself. The research, the partnering, I developed partnerships. I did all of that. And it's $1 million. And it was part-time.
Wow.
I did that part-time while I worked another job.
That seems like a good idea, is to maybe do it part-time, and definitely maybe do it under the supervision of someone else, if you can, and learn as much as you can. And then when you're ready, then you go off and do it on your own and start freelancing.
Right. And if, a shameless plug, I have a book on multiple sites on my TikTok, and a link here. You'll be able to see it if you're looking at it on YouTube. It's also on a podcast on Spotify. So you can find a link to my book. It has everything in it that I could possibly think of to teach someone that's basic entry level grant writing.
Right. So maybe buy the book first, learn as much, and then if you still need some guidance, find someone to work for. But
right. And what I tell people is I'm available to mentor. Of course, all those things come with a fee, because time is, as you know, you're in the business too of teaching people what to do and how to make money. And, you have to charge for my time, but I could tutor somebody and shepherd them through and guide them. I won't, and I can even read a grant. Now I do that. I will read and critique a grant, which is something I do a lot. In my past, I've read many grants and critiqued them, and so if you have one of those, that's doable. But I could certainly do that. Check out, so I say, the link. It's somewhere here.
You actually kind of led me to my next question. You were talking about everything has a price. How would you, if for anyone that is maybe going to go off and do this and be a freelancer, how would you go about pricing those services? Like, how did you decide how much you were going to charge?
It's just by the hour. It took me an average. It'll take you about, first off, you're not dealing with a whole big bunch of time to write a grant. So your time is condensed, because by the time you find a grant and the time you start writing, you really only have about 8 weeks to write that daggone thing. I spend an average of 40. If I'm doing this with a team, if I'm doing it by myself, I'll probably spend about 75 to 80 hours writing a grant all by myself. If I'm with a team, I'll probably spend 40 hours. That's just making sure that everybody's doing what they need to do. When you're looking at and just organizing it, it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe less. It just depends on the size of the grant. Most of the grants I write are 75, 80 page documents. That's a lot. That's a small novella. So it takes a lot of time. So I price it, by the amount of time, roughly $40 to $50 an hour, times 40. You're looking, that's a sizable chunk of change for somebody. But honestly, this is part about being successful too, what I've learned. And I think we were discussing this, and it's not to try to sell anything. It's just, I know the way people are when they say they want something. A lot of people say they want to do something, but they don't act like it. They don't do what they need to do in order to get to where they want to go.
Mm-hmm.
The book I have is $9. It is probably one of the best basic grant writing books out there. It tells you step by step everything you need to know. Well, if you're not willing to invest $9, even if that book sucked, if you're not willing to invest $9, you ain't serious about what you're doing. I have spent a whole lot more money than that trying to figure out the good from the bad. And so you have to be willing to pull the trigger, take a chance, educate yourself, and that don't come cheap. Education don't come cheap. I have people, they'll start out by saying, "Oh, let me ask you one question." Well, I know it's not just going to be one question. It's going to be 2 questions. It's going to be 3 questions. At some point, you don't have the time that they need, but they're not willing to pay you to get the information that they say they want. So I learned probably 30 years ago that you have to be willing to research, look at all of your options, and then pick the best options and just jump in. You know, if we're talking about and grant writing and success, I deal in these all the time. I talk to people about how to be successful. It's kind of like the grant writing thing. So when I found you, I had talked to several other creators who claim to help you grow your TikTok or
Really?
Instagram.
I didn't know that.
Yes. I thought I told you that. Yeah. 3 for sure.
Okay.
Several. And I messaged them and looked at their stuff, and I've been around enough. I thought, man, are they just trying to upsell me a $3,000 course that I really don't need? It was when I talked to these people and I bought the entry level thing, the $9, the $5 thing, because then you get the emails and
Yeah.
they will call you and talk to you. I was very clear what I wanted. I said, listen, I don't need a lot of basic stuff. I know a lot of stuff. And so I even sent a lot of these people the information that I had that would show them that I knew a little bit about what I was talking. I didn't need all that basic stuff. I needed someone to really take what I have and help me put it into another level. You were the only one that understood what I was looking for and did that. Everyone else was trying to upsell me a $5,000, a $4,000, a $3,000 course, and it's not what I needed.
Yeah. I mean, I find there's so many people out there doing that, and it's just all about the money. They're not necessarily in it to help anyone. And that's why it's so important to do what you did. And like, you could call it an interview, call it whatever you want to do it, but like you got to talk to these people to really get a feel for them as a person too, right?
My first hurdle is trying to get people to see that I'm not crazy, or maybe not as crazy as they might think. That's I always understand that. I have sold shit my whole life. I've been a salesman my whole daggone life. My father was a salesman, and so that's all I've done. So the very first hurdle you have to get around is this guy crazy? Is he an idiot? Is he just a guy that's hawking something that I don't need? So what's his game? So the very first time you talk to somebody, I work really hard to dispel that myth and to get them to know that I'm a real person. I have really good ideas. I just need someone who's in this new age of media to help me bring it along, because I've done the direct marketing. I've made money. I have a study skills video that made me, while I was going to law school, $30,000. Direct marketing. But this whole platform, these platforms here are a total different animal, and I have no idea. So if you go back to the grants, if you're not willing to educate yourself and figure out what you need, or at least basic level education, go to some sources and look. I mean, I go to the grant section of TikTok, and I'll plug in grant as a word, a search term, and I'll go through these pages. It's pitiful at the people that are just scammy.
Mm-hmm.
And you can look at their profile. They got 400 followers, and they're just hawking some kind of course. And their credentials, they don't have the credentials to support them. I guess I'm hating on everybody that does
No,
this.
you're just saying be smart about it and do your research.
Yeah, be smart. But eventually you have to pull the trigger and spend some cash.
Yeah.
If you're trying to listen, if you would have told me So all of the money that I've made and all of the people that I've helped make money, you're totaling a little more than $14 million on my own behalf, another 6 to 8 million on other people's behalf. Back in when I first started this, knowing what I know now, I would have paid $2,000 for this service. Um, it it it's just because you got to realize, of course, that's with hindsight, knowing what I know now and doing what I know works. It's real good information, and um, at some point, you pull the trigger. With social media, I looked and looked and looked probably for several months before I think you did an audit for
Mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I loved it. And what sold me, this is what sold me. It wasn't your audit particular, although it was good. You gave me great information. It was the fact you took what I thought was a lot of gosh dang time. You spent a shitload of time. I kept thinking, holy God. When I'm listening to it and your feedback, I thought, man, you're spending an inordinate amount of time. And to be honest, I fast forwarded. I'm like, how long is she going?
How long did she talk for?
Once I realized how long you were going, I backed it up and I listened. I thought, okay, she cares. She looked. She actually listened. And so that sold me. Is you closed it when you gave me that product that I don't know what it cost then. I think I told you I would have paid $300 for that. I know it didn't cost me $300. I can't remember what it was. $79 maybe.
Yeah, it went up in price though, because
Yeah.
I started to realize how much time I was putting into it.
Yeah, but that sold me, and so far we've had a good relationship where you bill me and I pay you, and we get this shit done.
We get this shit done.
Which is the way it's supposed to be.
This is turning into an amazing testimonial. Thank you. I'm going to use this.
Yeah, well, but you got to pull the trigger.
You do. You have to invest back into yourself and your business. Absolutely.
Man, as a lawyer, as a businessman, I have seen so many people that has these ideas, and it's so sad. So I look at some of these people the way that I think people look at me when they come and approach me with an idea. I'm a writer too. So when I write, people will read some of my stuff and say, hey, I got to tell you a story. As soon as they come out with that, my eyes want to roll back in my head and glaze over, because you don't know how many times I've heard that.
Yeah.
Do you have a minute? Can you read something that I've wrote? I've done that. And it's not that I'm big, but people don't put the work in first before they show what they got. And so when I first talk to people, I try to get it in 10 minutes. Are they serious? Have they looked at what they're doing? Or is this real basic level shit? Or are they really wanting to know some stuff? And where can I really help them? People are just afraid to do it. They say they want the goal. They say they want the brass ring, but they ain't afraid to jump. But everyone's like that. It's a hell of a lot more comfortable to sit there and hold on and hang on to that thing, that whatever you're doing, you ain't going nowhere, because that's comfortable. You know what that feels like. Gosh damn, my arms are hurting, but damn, that's comfortable, because dropping,
it's scary.
Letting go and falling is a hell of a lot more scary.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, you just got to let go if that's something you want to do. And I had reached a point. That's why I went to law school. I'd reached a point that I thought there was something else out there for me. So who told me that a blind guy, I haven't been able to read the printed word since I've been in the third grade, but who told me that someone that can't see to read, that was 33 years old, 4 kids, who told me that I could go to law school?
You did.
I did.
You did.
Took me 3 years to develop a plan to do it. So I plan. by that time, I'd developed enough knowledge about planning and goal setting. And so I employed a lot of the things that I tell people especially when it's talking about grant writing. There's a whole lot of stuff. I've talked to people who have paid to have me analyze their situation and get them ready to write a grant. There's a whole lot of crap you got to do to get ready to write a grant. Just a ton of stuff. Your organizational structure has to be tight. Your financial house needs to be in order, not just your personal house, but whatever company's name you're in and the bank account that you have. One lady, for example, had a bank account that had a wonderful idea for a store. And she was in a great niche, a dry cleaning business, serviced an underserved population, but she commingled her personal finances with her business. So one of the first things I noticed was, I said, baby, I said, you cannot do that, because when you're begging for money, and when you ask them for money, they're going to want to see your finances. You cannot be bringing a commingled account where you're at the supermarket one day and you're buying dry cleaning supplies the next, and then you're getting oil change, and then you're going to the circus and buying the babies some cotton candy. You can't do that. So I analyzed that situation, and I said, you got to do this. You got to get this stuff separated before you can even begin to write. But she had a lot of basics. She had a lot of the things. She had a business that she had worked. It was successful, had a 2 or 3 year track record, but her financial ship wasn't in good sailing order. And so you've got to get, there's a whole lot of stuff you got to do when you start writing a grant that puts you in a better position to do it. And that's where I can help. Because if you don't know how to get started, you'll never get started.
Right.
But you got to be willing to invest the time and the money. And I always take a shortcut. You can spend a hell of a lot of time. It took me 12 years. Or you can educate yourself, spend a little less time, a little more money on the front end, and it'll make you money on the back end, I promise, if you do it right.
So you had said earlier that you can write a grant for anything. So just to maybe give everyone a couple examples of what they could write grants for, could you just talk about like a few of the clients that you have had, and make sure that maybe like you're not always writing grants for the same thing, are you?
No, I've written some for substance abuse education.
Mm-hmm.
I've written some for legal services. I have written grants for after school programs. I have written grants for community projects. I wrote one for someone wanted to put awnings in their city. So I partnered with them in another little town where we live to get grant monies for as a beautification thing. There are literally grants for anything. And the way I tell people is look around your own community. The way that I did it, very first off, it's intuitive. It seems so simple that you believe, okay, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, because this is really simple. You look around your community and you look at where the problems are. You look at the local newspaper and you find out what the editorials are about, because those are problems that people have. And then you go about trying to figure out how you can solve those problems, where the money is that solves those problems. And if it's a current reoccurring problem, not just in your community, but in a lot of other communities, I'll guarantee you there's some grant money. There's someone willing to give you money to help you solve that problem. All you got to do is find it.
Okay.
So there's money for everything.
There's money for everything.
Yeah,
So
lots of it.
So go do your research and start writing grants.
Yeah, and check out our descriptions, right? Yours and mine. Check them out. I'm not a snake oil salesman. I've been doing this a long time. I have been in this space, grant writing, and in the motivation space since 1987. And I believe I know what I'm talking about.
I think you do.
I've helped other people. Hell, I've done it myself. And I just decided to try to do something about it and make a living a different way. Hell, I quit my law practice to do this. Yeah. Now that I don't know if I don't that might say more about lawyers than you want to know. But I still practice law. I'm part-time practice. So you
But the
never
grant writing
know.
book is good. I have read it. So make sure to go check that out. Yeah, only $9.
It's
It's a
a low,
steal.
low price
It's a
of
steal.
$9. A Starbucks and a pack of smokes.
There you go. There you go. All right. Well, until next episode, do you have anything else to say?
Nothing else. Just check us out. In the description, check me out. A lot of these different platforms: TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, with
He's
Spotify.
everywhere.
This probably show up on Spotify, and I always add your credentials at the bottom so where people can check you out because
I
I'm
am there
not
as well.
blowing smoke
Yes.
up your rear end, as they say in the mountains. And you provide real good service, so
Thank
it
you.
worked for me.
All right. It's always a pleasure talking to you, Gene. Until next time.
Woohoo! All right.
See ya.
Turn me around, help me to the door. I'll never make it on my own. Turn me around.